Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's so great that all of you put this on your calendar and know that even if I send the link out a day ahead of time, you already got it on your calendar and you were planning on coming. I appreciate that. So why don't we go ahead and get started with an opening prayer. And I wondered if Mike DeGraw, you would be willing to give that for us.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Father in heaven, we come before thee tonight. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to use technology to meet and to discuss our responsibilities in the emergency room of the church. We pray for inspiration and guidance as we communicate and talk, and that we'll be able to understand our callings better. We'll be able to fulfill them to the best of our abilities. Pray for thy Spirit to be with us as we do so. In the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. I like what you said at the end there, to the best of our abilities. Things are rocking and rolling for all of us, I am sure. So, all right, let's take stock here. Who all is here with us today? Mickey, you're here. I see Mickey. And do we have, oh, Brother Kennedy, hello. All right.
Good to see everybody.
Yeah, isn't that great? And
Yes.
then Mike, you're here. And do we have a second page or is everybody on the first page? Oh boy, we have lots of people. This is awesome. All right, so I'm just going to go down the list. Brother, is it Galaxy? Tab A Galaxy?
That's Jerry.
That's me.
Is that
me, and
Jerry?
I have no idea why it came up that way. Sorry, guys.
That's funny.
I
And
just want to keep you all guessing.
I see Tyler Carlson.
Yes,
All right, Tyler, is this your first time here or have you been here
it
before?
is my first time.
Yeah,
Well,
he just was called as in our state as one of the emergency response specialists. So he has a wonderful background. He's a great addition to our team, Terry. A great addition to our team.
Are you replacing Brother Colin Green?
Brother Jacobson, Mark.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And what ward are you in?
Grossmont in the East Stake.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And there's Mickey and hello, Brother Griffin. EQ. And who do we have? We have Wayne. Okay. And Stephen Fairbanks. Welcome back from, where were you? The Holy Land?
I took a vow of silence.
Yeah, Egypt.
5 points for Mike.
Really holy to some.
That's right. All right. We have Howard Cottom. Is this your first time here?
Yeah, and the second time. Bill Snap and I are Escondido Stake ESR, or
Perfect.
ERS, sorry. And I had a question. You say that this is being recorded, so Bill wasn't able to be here tonight. Can he get the recording? And what's the easiest way to get the recording?
Well, Mike usually records it, and between the two of us, we try and send it out to the best of our abilities after the meeting.
Oh, great. Okay, very good.
So within the week, but the goal would be, the next day, but that doesn't always happen. So.
Very good.
All right, and we got Mike from Poway Stake. And Rob, hello, long time no talk.
Yes. at least 2 hours.
I know, right? And I did put a call into Casey and left him a
Okay.
message, so I'll see if I hear back. And
All right.
again, thank you for being here, Brother Kennedy. Good to see you.
See you.
Who else do I have here that I have missed? Brother Ogden?
Yes, Robert Ogden here with Carmel Valley Ward. Very nice to be on with you all.
Okay, and Carmel Valley Ward is what stake?
Del Mar State.
Del Mar? Is
Isn't that right?
that PQ?
It is.
PQ stake.
PQ Penasquitos?
Oh, you're saying Del Mar stake. I was
Del
thinking
Mar.
Del
Mar.
Sur in my head. I don't know why.
Okay. All right.
Got it. Now that we're all confused, sorry about that.
That's all right.
And Stephen Egbert and John Coffey, good to, well, I can't see you, but it's good that you're on the call with us. Thank you. And James, you're on the phone. Good to have you from Carlsbad. And John. And John Morrison.
Yep.
Okay.
Del Mar steak.
Yes. Excellent. All right. I think I got everybody. So I always like to take roll and see how many stakes represent, and then I usually report up the chain to Becky Davies, because we're part of the Communication Council for the region, and they always like to know how we're doing and how many stakes are involved. Welcome to our first time guest. We're so glad that you joined us. And if we move too fast, yeah, just know that we do send out the minutes and the recording, and you can review it anytime. And with that being said, well, if you have your agenda, like I say, I sent it late, about 10 minutes ago now. So if you have access to your email, it's on there and you can pull it up and look at it as we go along. And we have been talking about the Great Shakeout and the October Drill. And in doing so, and this is for the benefit of those that haven't been here very often to hear this, or it's your first time, we've kind of given some quarterly drills to work up to the October Drill, because we were hoping to do a boots on the ground approach in case we had no power, no technology. And so we don't often do that, but we'd like to try it this year. And we know all the stakes and awards may not be up to speed or have the bandwidth or the resources to pull something like that off. So we certainly don't want to discourage anyone from participating in the normal fall communication exercise. We just highly, recommend for those that do have the bandwidth, the gold standard would be to try it without technology this year. And the idea behind that is knowing that you probably wouldn't be 100%, and that's okay. We would just like to give it a try, see how it works, see if you can develop a mapping system and have something in place in case you do lose power, that you would have a framework to fall back on and work with in an emergency. Of course, if you don't have the bandwidth, then do your regular communication, but we don't want to discourage you from participating in that exercise. In the past, we have always said that anything else we ask you to do is optional. And some stakes do have a spring exercise. And we've been talking about that spring exercise for this year, and hoping more people, now that they've been developing their framework, might have the bandwidth for it. But again, just know that that is optional. So there are a few stakes that do it in April, I believe. Is that right, Mike Guyman?
Yeah, we're suggesting the date of April 15th.
15th, tax day. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, I just want to remind, in the agenda points it out too, I'm trying to state specifically that that is an optional. The reporting is not a stringent chain of command going all the way up to Sister Jimenez, although she will accept reports. The main drill that we still want to focus on is the fall drill. So just know we're trying to make that clarification, because we don't want stakes to feel overwhelmed that we're asking them to do too much. The quarterly drills were put in place to give you baby steps to work up towards the fall drill. But certainly, if you don't have the bandwidth and the resources at this time, just do the best you can with what you have.
Terry, is this in addition to the communication drill that we're doing in the stake, or is that in lieu of?
Circle back and explain that one to me again, Mike.
So in our stake, we're doing a communication drill, like we usually do it around general conference time.
Correct.
And
that is
so
not in addition. You're right. It's what we're asking a spring drill, and like your stake has always done a spring drill. So if that date isn't working for you on the 15th, You can work that out with Mike Guyman, but he's kind of giving that date as a goal. But
Well,
if your
and-
date is different, that's okay.
And if your stake is already doing a spring exercise, then, and that's sufficient for your stake's bandwidth and for your plan, then that could be, you know, in lieu of anything else. Because really what we're trying to do is to help train units and those who have the bandwidth and have the spirit of emergency, you know, response. So moving forward, we just really want to make sure that everybody understands that we are here to help in training and putting things together.
So just to kind of make this sink in a little bit, I met with all my block captains last Sunday, and explained to them that for this particular drill, even though the stake is just a communication drill, I did mention to them that the most important part to me as an emergency response person is that in the spirit of boots on the ground, that I wanted them to physically know where all the addresses were in their block, and they can report back to me however they want that they've reached out to them. But the most important thing is that they physically could make their way to that house in the case of an emergency to respond. And that's kind of how I'm using this drill as a communication drill, but also to kind of emphasize the boots on the ground as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we might refer to it as communications drill. It's definitely a contacting exercise, and whatever in the spring method you want to use is fine. But if you're using it in practice for the fall, that's great too. So.
Okay. Because in the past, it's been kind of a fellowshipping drill, I think. The block captains kind of had the attitude that this was just a, you know, reach out to the less active people, you know, in the ward. And I emphasize that may be nice, go ahead and do that. But I'm really more focused on you physically know where they live, not just, you know, a text message or a name on his list.
And I will tell you that in the past, just because I know your ward, the person that held the calling before you, he often would utilize a boots on the ground approach and then bring the families a planning guide from, you know, the Office of Emergency Services and physically hand it to them so that there was a tangible reason for them being there, you know.
Good idea.
Yeah, so that's an option if anyone wants materials like that. Again, yes, thank you, Brother Griffin. They give away boxes of it, so anything you want, you can get from the Office of Emergency Services and use for your purposes. So,
Terry, could I just say one thing?
yes, Brother Kennedy, please.
Yeah. For those wards and stakes that that do not yet have a boots on the ground plan for contacting people face to face, just be aware that stake and ward clerks can print a map with little markers where every household in your ward exists. So you can get that printout from them and then start to help, you know, subdividing the ward into blocks. When Mike mentioned block captains, it kind of reminded me of, you know, of that, where you can start carving up the ward into different blocks or, you know, whatever geographic locations to start helping with that effort.
And David, the new tool, the tools are getting better and better all the time. The tools app, in fact, lets anybody create a list, and on that list, like they could put their people that they're going to visit. And once they've created that list, on the Android version, it is now lets you do group texting from that list, group emails from that list. It will let you make custom maps and then link to Google and get directions to that location from where you are, get to the next location. I mean, people, anyway, we're going to get into that more. I'm creating a training piece right now, but the more I look at it, the more new things I learn, and it just gets longer and longer.
We're always sneaking stuff, new technology in.
But this is great. This is what we have needed for so long, to have this ability. You know, the old pins on the wall, you would use it maybe twice, and then you go, this is no good. This doesn't help us. But you have a map that's dynamic. You click on a dot and it comes up and tells you who's there. You can email. Yeah, anyway, so thank you, David.
Great. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
I was gonna say, so Mike, when do you plan on having that happening?
Well, the first half, the Church of Jesus Christ .org, they have a directory and members map. I have that presentation and I can distribute that. That's the first part, because you use that to create your districts, because it's really good at it. And then once you get your list, your district lists on a you know, a text document, then you send those out and people can just use app LDS used to be called LDS Tools. Now I think it's called Members Tools or something like that.
Member tools.
You remember
Are
tools?
we gonna need, are we gonna need any instruction from you on this, do you think? Or do you think we
Absolutely.
can-
Well, it depends. The real thing that I've run into now that's slowing me down is that the Apple configuration is different than the Android configuration. And so I don't have a Apple phone. So I think, Byron, do you have Apple or Android?
Oh,
Well, no wonder you're here. Yeah. So Byron and I are going to work together and see what's different on them. And I hope to have it ready in about a week, at least the Android version, and then maybe the
Perfect.
differences between. I probably should do it the other way around because there are more Apples than Androids, but I have Android, so I'm starting there.
I do too.
Oh, good. Yeah, and I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised, and you're going to see that this is not as hard as it used to be. Because when you put it in the app and you make your list of who you're assigned to, when they move out, their name disappears. So
Wow,
you know
that's-
they're gone. And if you have membership that oops, my grandson wants to ride home from work. I guess he's walking tonight. Anyway, what was I talking about? Anyway, I'm going to stop.
editing the list.
No, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. This is what we've been needing and asking for and
I
wanting.
just found the best way ever to take my mind off
Thank you,
of
Mike.
Yeah, you
It's
want.
All right. So the reason we wanted to share that with you is we've kind of been getting some feedback that the stake presidents might be feeling overwhelmed with the drill and the concept of the quarterly drills that we were trying to put in place to lead up to that. But certainly, as I said, if you have the bandwidth to do that, please work that program to the best of your abilities. And if you do not, then we just ask that you participate in the drill the best you can. So, and Brother Kennedy, is there anything that you might add to that? Are we covering that sufficiently?
Oh, you've got it covered well, Terry. I appreciate that.
Okay.
I'll just reemphasize from Elder Clark's perspective. You know, he's in full support of the annual drill, and if stakes have the bandwidth, just as Terry mentioned, if your stakes have the bandwidth, then please feel free to do these drills more frequently, either in the spring or quarterly.
So with that being said, having the bandwidth, I kind of want to dive into that as on the agenda. I wanted to address emergency response councils. And I hope those in attendance know that, you know, the program that we've tried to put in place, or the framework we've suggested that wards and stake use in the callings that support this response and communication exercises should allow for multiple people to be working on this together and not fall on one person's shoulder. I mean, ultimately, your priesthood leadership is responsible for the response part of things, and yet, you know, then they usually have a counselor then that takes a portion of that off their plate, right? And that high counselor or that bishopric counselor typically kind of would stop there. What we suggest is that you have an emergency response specialist called and an emergency communication specialist called in each ward and stake. And the idea with that specialist, then they become a facilitator to organize the emergency response council. And that is simply bringing together the leadership heads once a quarter to talk about your emergency plan your communications, and filling in the gaps of what you think your stake and ward needs are based on those who are most vulnerable, how you're going to contact or help them in an emergency, and many other factors down the line. But it's up to you to discuss as a council. So it's not following on just the emergency response specialist shoulders or the high councilman's shoulders or, you know, even the priesthood leadership shoulders, but it should be spread out. And if you have this framework that's meeting together once a quarter, then you can discuss things and take those baby steps to put a plan in play and build it up to a bigger and better plan, to the point where you could be participating on a multi contact, you know, more than once a year level, because you already have the framework in place, you have the people in place, and it's just now working the system and testing that system and seeing where the gaps are and improving that system. So that's what we really encourage. If you're here as an emergency response specialist, I guess I'd like to find out if any of you have, and we'll start with this year or maybe last year, if you're been in the calling that long, have you had an emergency response, emergency council meeting yet? Because we talk about this usually when you're first called, and you know, it may get overwhelmed with so many things coming at you, maybe you've forgotten it. But has anyone had success on holding an emergency response council? I'd like to hear that.
Terry, in our new Shadow Ridge ward, we did have one before the holidays.
Really?
With a member of the bishopric present. And we've got a boots on the ground map from our person that's heading that up. I do the communication side. The next step though is to do an exercise. So, but otherwise we had to start, we have a nucleus going.
Yeah, and that's just key, getting eyeball contact with people and identifying the roles and who's going to do what, and then taking those next steps. It's as simple as that. But as an emergency response specialist, what we're asking you to do is facilitate that meeting. We don't want you to, of course, share all information with your priesthood leadership, but we don't want it to be on their shoulders to call that meeting. We want them to preside over it. So you would extend that invitation to the leaders of your ward or stake and have them all meet together with the presiding leadership overseeing it, and then a general consensus of what your next steps are. So that's my challenge. Mike DeGraw, I know you've had a loose one, although you weren't there, but you're getting ready to have one, right?
Yeah, I have another one scheduled for the week Sunday after Easter. I know you'll be out of town, but I am reaching out to the council that was there before, in addition to a representative from the High Council, the state presidency, the young men's, young women's, the primary association. So hopefully we'll get some more attendees, and we'll review the matrix of the state plan.
Okay.
And Terry,
you know, yes.
Oh, so for the Del Mar stake, the council meets, I believe it's once a month for the stake.
Okay.
And I don't know about the individual wards at this point, but I keep reminding the wards to set up the councils. And
that's a good point with the reminding. I was going to say, if you're not sure how to do one and you want help with that, Stephen Egbert and I are happy to come and attend one of those meetings and help you facilitate that and lead it. To give you an idea of how that works. Because a lot of times when you first bring people together, they kind of give you that deer in the headlights look and say, why am I here? And, you know, once we get into the meat of it, they start to understand, and it might take a few meetings for everyone to get on board, but that's not unusual. It's always kind of slowly rolling that rock uphill to get people on board and understand the purpose, and pray about it together as a council, you know, so that you have a united purpose. But I would strongly suggest that it not be a footnote at the bottom of a already ongoing ward or state council meeting, just because emergency stuff tends to get down to the bottom of the list. And by the time you get down to the end of it, everybody wants to go home and you've got 5 minutes to try and get everything out. And it just kind of doesn't really go very far. So we encourage a separate meeting. And is that what you're having, Mickey, an emergency response council, or is it a council meeting that's the normal council?
No, from the stake
Mhm.
perspective, it's an emergency communication council
That's great.
that meets monthly.
That's great. So that's a gold standard. We think quarterly is good, but if you've got the bandwidth to meet more often and you want to do that and have more extensive planning, that's great too. But just wanted to make that clear that those are in place to kind of help you build a base and get that support out there and build your framework so you can get these systems in place and everybody's on the same page. You identify the jobs and the roles, and people all of a sudden have something to do and have a little bit more invested interest in it. So are there any questions about that?
I don't have a question, but for Escondido stake, our first one will be held 2 weeks from tonight.
Oh, that's
So this
great.
will be our first time to meet with all the wards. Hopefully the bishops have called all of the specialists by then. But so we'll see who's able to show up. So we've invited representatives from Bishopric, Young Women, Relief Society, Priesthood, and the ward clerk.
Yes, and the ward clerk is very important because they're going to be the ones helping you with your mapping and contact
Yes,
information updating.
that's why he's there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that would be,
Absolutely.
the membership clerk is vital in keeping this all together.
Thank you for mentioning that. Can I just, one more thing before you go on, Mike?
Mhm.
Just as I mentioned that I would be there to help anyone that wanted to have assistance facilitating a meeting like that. If you're an emergency response specialist and you haven't held one of these meetings yet, or I mean, if you're holding these meetings, but you're having trouble with the wards holding a meeting, offer to do the same for them. Stephen Egbert and I and Mike Guyman, we kind of train you, the trainers. So this is kind of a train the trainer meeting. And then likewise, you're training your wards to mirror what you're doing. So offer to help them facilitate that in their wards as well, if you need to. Because sometimes just telling them about it, they still can't quite grasp the concept until they're physically doing it.
Good suggestion.
And Terry, I just wanted to put a word in this process. There's a wonderful resource that we have, and Sister Blaylock has been working on it. It's the website sdpreparedness.com, and it takes each of these councils and callings and things and puts them in a very easy to understand flow. Sometimes going into the church website and searching there, you end up going down so many rabbit holes. I would recommend that you send out your invitation to the meeting and a reference to that site, and then they'll have, if they have a chance to look at it, they'll have a lot more understanding of what it's all about and what we're asked to do.
That's perfect. And I would like to say Beverly isn't able to be here tonight. She had another commitment, but the website is in the process of being overhauled, and she is making it still accessible, but you will notice some changes, and it might not look the same. It might not quite function the same as it did before, but for most of it, we've been working with all the links and everything, trying to make sure the old broken ones are removed and new ones are replaced, but the formatting is a little different. So just know it's all still there, but it's a work in progress. So if you run into any difficulties, please let us know so that we can address them.
Terry, Brother Ogden's got his hand up.
Yes, Brother Ogden.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so it's clear listening to all this that folks are in different places with this. For me, I'm into this assignment for this calling for about a month, and I really haven't done anything with it. And I just moved to the area about a year ago, so I'm not highly familiar with the area at all. I think it would be beneficial if you know, like for me at least, if I could attend one of these quarterly meetings that a ward or stake has to get an understanding of how it's flowing. To, you know, I think it's anyway, good to learn best practices. What seems to be working? What are the types of questions that are being raised? What are people looking at? That's one point I wanted to make. The other one is, I know there was a discussion of this Android and iPhone app. If anyone can let me know what this app is called, how I could download it, so I could start just kind of playing with it too. And then three, is there any plan for us to? I know we're spread out, but for us to meet in person and have engagements to discuss some of these things. I found this interesting and stuff, but I think the real bonding, at least for me, happens actually when we're sitting down in a room together and begin to socialize and work through some of these things.
Absolutely. So with that, tell me again what location you're at?
He's Carmel
So,
Valley.
I'm in Carmel Valley. Mhm.
And Brother Ogden, just FYI, John Morrison and I are going to start working on quarterly meetings with all the emergency response specialists in our stake. And we'll probably, it might be more Zoom, but because everybody's so spread out in our stake, but we are going to get together with that. And I am available, as I told you, to be able to help get you going, in your ward. So
there's that.
All right, thank you. And I'm just going to throw it out there that it would be, I don't know how other people will feel about it, but I think it'd be beneficial to throw out the idea of a face-to-face gathering. And if people say, hey, Zoom's better for them, then so be it. But if people are willing to come together, I think it's wonderful if you get people to come together physically.
And we do have a once-a-year training. It usually happens at the later part of the year. This year, we've moved it up to September, for those that didn't know that already. In the past, we've held it in October and November, but now we're trying to get ahead of fire season. And September is a good month for National Preparedness Month as well. So we'll have an in-person training. It's already scheduled. Brother Guyman, remind me the date. I had it on my agenda, but it's
the 16th
of September, right?
It's at the San Diego Stake Building on Mount Abernathy. We'll have more
And
details.
typically, this is Steve Egbert, we typically have between 100 and 200 people there, so you won't feel alone.
Yeah, that's the goal. But any sooner than that, if the meetings that Mickey is holding, are helpful to you, then that's great. If you still want to attend someone else's, you're welcome to do that as well. So just let us know. I know there's a couple of them coming up within the next few weeks. So whatever your bandwidth is to attend everything.
Well, Carrie, even an ad hoc meeting, I mean, we in my stake, the Claremont, in my ward, the Claremont ward, in the San Diego Stake, the Elders Quorum president called a committee, and he's assigned a bunch of people to work on this, and the meetings are every Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah, until we get it up off the ground. He instituted boots on the ground before, I think Mike was like first that I know of, and then they did it in our ward, and they've done a great job. And I've learned a lot watching them go through the process and been able to make some suggestions. So even though that's not, the way it's supposed to be done, he's getting it done because, yeah, and that's what we have to do. We just have to do what we can do, to get the job
And I
done.
would tell you, that reminds me of Sister Monroe, who gave our last presentation, where she was in the Poway stake and called as the emergency response specialist. And she felt that they needed to meet often as well and get a plan out there as soon as possible. And so she really pushed it. And then lo and behold, she gets, called on a mission, and she never saw that she had to use any of that, in Poway, but towards the end of her mission, that all kicked in and she had to use it for the emergency the Philippines experienced. not too long ago. So you never know when those things are going to come into play. But if you're feeling pushed and you're doing it more often and you're getting the response and support, then that's great. There's probably a reason for it. So, all right. So with that, we kind of go on to any other updates, but I think we've covered it mostly on the mapping and the communications, and certainly the Android situation that Brother Ogden's asking about. Is that something you can address, Mike Guyman?
Absolutely. I very quickly, if you have Android, it's in the App Store, and it's tools or member tools, or just click in LDS and tools, and you'll find it. You install it. You have to get registered on it, because it's going to send information to you. I think you might need to know your member number. And you'll also need that information, I think, to get an account on churchofjesuschrist.org. You get your membership number to create that account. That's what I remember in my experience. I set mine up a long time ago. But and if you get the app in, you just start poking around, and particularly looking at lists, creating lists, and just follow it. If you're intuitive on things, you'll start to figure out all the group messaging and map making, and you'll be excited about it.
Excellent. Yes, and Brother Bonnet actually was kind enough to send me a little chat. I didn't know whether I'm familiar with the LDS tools as far as knowing there's an app, and actually I have the app downloaded. I didn't know if you were referring to a separate app specifically for the preparedness, but it's buried in there, so that's good.
Well, it was first utilized for like fast offering routes that I'm aware of, with the mapping and everything. And
yeah. All right, excellent. Thank you.
And in fact, in the chat rooms on this topic, and there is a group that meets and talks about it, nobody's talking about emergency response yet, but we need to get the word out that this is really the tool. And there's some cool things about using it with Google. I might just add with the app, once you download the data, you don't need the internet to access that data. And if you download a map of your area on Google, you won't need the internet to use your, the GPS will guide you. So we're talking about emergencies here when we're not going to have internet. So this app combined with Google Maps, as long as you've downloaded that app, is just really an amazing tool, and you can carry it with you. We always have our phones with us, so we'll always have our lists, and we'll have our maps and everything. So just got to make sure it's charged.
Question, please. Is the Apple app on the website that we can download, or only Android?
I'm sure it is. I'm sure that you'll find this if you do the same search. What is it? The Apple Store that they the apps in? Yeah, just go there and download it. Now I have a.
Please give me the name of the app. I'll write it down. Okay.
Well, it was LDS Tools. So
LDS Tools. It's LDS Tools.
LDS Tools.
Listing
Okay. I got it. Okay. Thank you.
Because they're trying to replace LDS and so kind of distinct association with the church. So anyway, so yeah, that's really cool. And just a sidelight, if you have an LTE tablet, then you most likely will also have a GPS receiver in your tablet. For those who know what I'm talking about and have such. The rest of you, never mind.
All right. Anything else there, Mike, or is that cover communications for now? Because we've kind of talked about that a lot.
It does it does for the most part. And again, I have part number 1 that's ready to be looked at, and by the end of the week, I hope to have part number 2 done. And if Byron Burnett will help me, we'll have hopefully we'll have for Apple and Android. If not, we'll just have the Android. We'll put it out right away. And please remember, this is a work in progress. I don't claim to be the definitive expert on anything that's happening with this, because they just updated it, and before they did not have group texting. But I saw this icon, I go, what is this? And I clicked on it, and there it was, group texting. So yeah, that's why I want everybody else to look at it and poke around too, and give us some feedback as we create this training document.
Yeah. All right. With that being said, thank you for Brother Carlson putting in your email. If you're here for the first time or you don't get my emails, or Brother Guyman's, could you please put your email on the chat? So we're able to capture it and include you for future communication. That would be great. And if you're here for the first time, remind me of what ward and stake you're in as well, and your calling.
And Terry, if I could
yes.
just interject here, because Jerry was telling us the big change in El Cajon stake. They've reduced, mostly reduced units, right, Jerry? So I've asked
Yeah,
him.
they killed 2 more units. They killed the Granite Hills ward and the Bostonia ward. And
Wow.
they shuffled people into the Alpine ward. The Fuerte ward is now called the Magnolia ward and houses most of the, in fact, if not all of the Bostonia ward. So we're down to 4 wards in the Spanish branch.
Wow. So tell me the names of the 4 wards again.
Alpine,
Mm-hmm.
Hillsdale,
Mm-hmm.
Magnolia,
Uh-huh.
Lakeside,
Okay.
and El Rey is the Spanish branch.
Right.
And
Okay.
Mike asked me earlier if I knew who the bishop was. And the answer is yes, I do. This is the bishop of the Magnolia ward. Name is
Oh my-
Daniel Henry, Henrie.
I thought you were saying you were the bishop of the Magnolia ward. Okay. Daniel Henry. Got it.
I asked him if he was the new stake president.
No, you guys, come on, knock it off, will you? Holy cow. I thought you liked me.
We love you, Jerry.
Yeah.
All right. Then I don't see the Stringhams on here tonight, but just know that last time, if you weren't here, we've invited the San Diego Mission to be a part of this monthly meeting, and the Stringhams were assigned to liaison with them. And so they gave us a nice presentation last time on expectations of finding missionaries during an emergency, what their role is, what they expect ward and stakes to do. And if you're interested and you didn't get that before, well, Mike has it either in the recording from last time or it's briefly outlined in the minutes from our last meeting. So I can resend those out for anyone that didn't hear and wants to know. But it's almost like what you would expect. Redundancy in an emergency is never a bad thing. So the San Diego Mission will definitely be ferreting out where their missionaries are, but wards and stakes are encouraged to find their local missionaries as well and keep them in the reporting process. So.
And Terry, and a broader thing to keep in mind is that it had been mentioned to me by some of the people that sometimes the maps and the directories don't give accurate locations for where people live. The missionaries, can be used to go out and to visit these places, take a look at the map and see if the people are there. They're great at updating the ward directory. And we were talking about using it as fellowshipping, using this opportunity, as Mike DeGraw was saying, to reach out and fellowship, but also the missionaries can get involved and help out. And that's what Sister Merritt, was saying, that the elders are ready to help.
Yeah, she did volunteer that, and that was good.
Right. And this is, it's a work in progress of getting the missionaries updated as to what they're supposed to do. And that has changed from the information that they had before. So they're working on that, and also working on making sure that we know where they live, because they don't always live in your area. And if they're not living they don't always live in the ward or stake boundaries that they're in. So, and I suggest using the ward mission leader to help you keep track of them.
We had the missionaries over from our ward over the other day, and I reminded them, and this reminds me that I need to remind the ward emergency response specialists. I think we should always tell our missionaries they need to know where the closest ward member is, so that in an emergency, I said, if there's an emergency that crops up, first person you text is your mission president, let them know that you're doing fine. But I said, if for some reason you cannot, you need to get to the closest, if it's safe to leave your home or your apartment. But I said, you need to contact the closest family in your ward so that they can, you know, if they have to just go from one family to another family down the way, get the information to the bishopric or the elders quorum that you are okay, because I specifically talked about the Hurricane Rise situation in the Philippines, that the church is going to want to know first where the missionaries are, and then second, they're going to want the accounting of the ward members and the status of the buildings.
Wards and
So-
missions, wards and missions will be working on that together with stakes and missions.
Exactly, but have the backup and know where the closest ward member is to where these missionaries are.
Good point.
There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to missionaries, so everybody's eyes on them is crucial.
Literally moving.
Yes. Okay.
You
Go ahead.
guys know the names of Stringhams, what their first name is? Is it
Yeah.
Brother
is it
and
Dick
sister.
and Cindy?
It's
You see.
Ray is the brother Stringhams, and I would have to look up the email to remember Sister Stringhams, but I can do that.
Is it Stringham or Stringhams with an S?
I think it's just no S. Vicky. Yes, and it's
Yeah,
not
Vicky
plural.
and Ray.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, and we've already updated you on Sister Blaylock. Included in the agenda tonight, I went ahead and left all the emergency social media places that you could look at to see what we're doing. And we encourage you to look at the Facebook pages, like them, follow them, share them, especially information found at the website. But she's also devising a calendar of events. And so anything that you guys have event-wise in emergency response or communications, she's interested in putting those events on the calendar. Just for such things like Brother Ogden brought up, you know, maybe you want to visit someone's fair, maybe you want to sit in on somebody's meeting to see how it goes, different things like that. So if as things crop up, if you can share that with her, her email is also included on the agenda. So, and I'll be sending minutes back out after this as well. So it kind of will reiterate all of this. So I can include those that didn't get the original agenda. So with that, any questions on the website or social media? Okay, one of the things she did do, she posted, what was it, the CERT meeting coming up in Alpine or someplace, I can't remember, Lakeside. And I noticed that one of the county agencies saw that and started sharing it as well. And so that's what we, part of the emergency response specialist calling, and the whole reason we sit on the communication council, which used to be public affairs, is that this is a collaborative effort outside the church. This is an outward facing calling. You're networking not only with your members of the church, but also your community. So we want to be engaging in what they're doing, learning from their emergency planning, especially knowing where you fit in as a ward or stake in the emergency plan in your city, your community, or whatever you're closest to, and participating in possibly councils like your Fire Safe Council or your CERT program, different things that are out there that involve you in the community, get you up to speed with what the preparedness resources are in your local community, which will be different from my local community, and networking with them, sharing with them what you know and having them share what they know. You can bring them in as resources for your trainings, put on fairs, you know, all sorts of different ways you can utilize it. We've done Zoom meetings with Red Cross. We've done all sorts of different things. So we want to be out there networking. Again, it's, you know, almost a missionary opportunity in that sense as well. So it serves a purpose in the emergency response, but it also makes inroads and bridges into our local communities with our leaderships, our emergency and partner organizations. So we will always want to be in a good light in our community and represent the church in a positive way. And this is definitely one of those positive ways that we can impact. So any questions about that? Okay, so outlined in the agenda, we've already gone over it, but I left in all the emergency communication exercise update, breaking it down from the spring and fall exercises, which one is optional, which one we require everyone to participate in, which is that fall one. I've left the communication contacts for Sister Jimenez. So in case you've been reorganizing and you have new stake presidents, that they know who they're supposed to contact, which is the area stake and welfare manager, Sister Jimenez. Then, so you can look that over at your leisure and see where you fit in and what you're accomplishing or want to accomplish based on that outline. Then the other thing that we had talked about last month for the first time is the creating a operations manual, so to say, for yourself as you go along. Journal what you're doing, your progress, and make a little operations manual for the next person who might be stepping into your shoes so they don't have to start cold. So we encourage you to do that. Has anyone already been working on one of those? Creating a little step-by-step or what your progress are, where you are now, where to find your emergency response plan, anything like that? Anyone wants to report on how they're doing with that? Okay, everybody's still working on it then. But don't forget, I know there's a lot of balls in the air there, but this is, if you write down a little bit as you go, especially contacts, if you're making those outside community contacts, who is your point of contact and their contact information, those types of things. So we don't lose it and lose ground as we change positions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the stakes to hear what's new in your neck of the woods. And so why don't we start with Jim? You're here from Carlsbad, right? James?
Yes, ma'am. Yep, got nothing new to report.
Okay, but you're still working the program?
You betcha.
Best you can?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. You have a lot of good resources and instincts, and just know that those that are in Carlsbad, Vista, San Marcos, Escondido, you're not really orphans in our eyes as far as the emergency world goes. When stuff hits the fan, Newport's a long ways away. So we encourage you to stay involved in our emergency response meetings and trainings. And I think even Elder Clark would back me up. You're encouraged to attend them. And so if you ever, yes.
Fully appreciate everything we get from you guys because we get nothing from Newport. So this is our connection to reality here. So appreciate everything.
Yeah, certainly. So let's see, Delmar, Mickey, you and Brother Morrison are here. Do either one of you want to report on your latest and greatest?
I'm still working on getting the wards to do their geographical block captains. As I said before, John is going to work with me on Zoom meetings, but if we can get all the emergency response representatives together, we can also do, a one-time, maybe once a year get together. I don't know what else, we're working on the quarterly meetings, as I said, to get together. I don't know if John, if you have any other thoughts on this?
Well spoken.
Yeah, okay.
You're always the best.
All right, great. And is Escondido, I know you kind of told me you've got a meeting coming up. Is there anything else you're working on, or what your progress is in the wards or anything?
Yes, we're holding our, as I mentioned early in the meeting, we're holding our first training for all the wards. We have 6 wards in our stake now. Our stake was split off with San Marcos not too long ago, 6 months ago, I guess. And so we're hoping to have all 6 wards represented at that meeting 2 weeks from tonight. This will be our first stake council for emergency response. And as I mentioned, we've got bishopric members. Even the stake president is going to be there for this first meeting. President Thompson is really adamant about getting this going, and we'll have representatives, as I mentioned, from the ward clerk, elders quorum, Relief Society. I know I'm leaving somebody out. And the specialists. Hopefully the specialists at least are called by then. The stake president has put that assignment to the bishops, and we've met with the stake president, and he wants to be there. He wants to show his support and get this off the ground.
Fabulous. You know, it's sometimes the progress is slow, and you kind of just patiently wait for the pieces to fall into play and for the callings to start appearing, especially filling the callings with people that have that background or the inspiration that they feel that this needs to be done. And
by the way, we do attend CERT meetings also. Both
Great.
Bill and I go to the CERT meetings, have done for some time. So that's actually a very good resource. For example, we didn't know until recently that the dam above Escondido, which is Lake Wolford, is in badly need of repair. And if that were to fail, there would be a wall of 7 feet of water cascading down through Escondido, and it would be, some of us would be on islands for a number of weeks probably. So we weren't aware of that until we attended the CERT meetings. So that's going to be one of our identified possible disasters that we want to address.
Yeah, so important. Just like you said, our localities, even though we're all in San Diego County, our identifiable hazards are all going to be different. And so that's why there's no cookie cutter template for you to use as far as putting an emergency plan together. It kind of has to be putting people in play to learn the area and what the hazards are, and then addressing the needs of the members and the community around. So that's great that you're identifying that. That's a gold standard. Woohoo, you get a gold star. All right. And let's see. El Centro, Stephen Fairbanks, are you still with us? I lost your picture.
Still here.
Great.
We just got 4 new elders quorum presidents.
Whoa.
So we've got a lot of work to do there. I'm getting quite a bit of positive response from the Relief Societies. They're anxious to participate in getting this going, and I really appreciated Mike Guyman's PowerPoint that he sent out. It was very helpful, and I think I'm going to be using that to do some training here real soon. So we're making progress. It's slow.
Yeah, it's slow, but you know, building that foundation and having people in place in this calling, longevity wise, is so important, because making those connections are hard. Making inroads into the community is hard. You know, getting people to understand the program, it just takes time. And so if you're constantly rotating this calling, then you're not going to get very far. And sometimes it's, you know, 2 steps forward and a step back, or vice versa, but
hopefully not 2 steps forward and 3 steps back.
Yeah, hopefully not. You've made great progress, and we appreciate your consistency out there in El Centro. And like I say, I've been in this for 7 years now, and we've seen all sorts of slow but steady progress, and it just gets more and more. The base keeps growing, and that's very satisfying to me. So I think it will get there for you too. So thank you for all you do.
Yep.
And then where are we next? Escondido, El Centro, Poway, Mike DeGraw.
I really don't have anything that hasn't been already said. I think
Okay.
we have our meeting coming up and preparing for a communication exercise. So I did do some tweaking to the radio system, and every time we do one of these, I learn something about GMRS radio. So it's a great learning experience for me.
Have you attended your communication council meeting?
Which one?
The one with Darlene Dunn. For those that don't know, part of your emergency response specialist, if you're called to be emergency response specialist, again, you're part of that bigger, what used to be called public affairs, but now they call it the communication council. So as the stake representative, your wards wouldn't do it, but as a stake representative, you would attend your stake communication council and work in conjunction with them on the different things community-wise or church-wise that they're working on, and they are assisting you for the things that you are working on. And the reason I bring that up is Darlene Dunn is your communication director, your CD, and she attended the recent community meeting where you put on a presentation about the solar in your home and the power generators and whatnot. And she got really excited about meeting with you and discussing putting on an emergency fair in the stake. So have you talked to her about that? Has she contacted you?
I have not talking. I mean, we talk after that meeting. She's actually part of my committee as well.
Fabulous. So when you see her, just know I'm reminding you she brought that up in case she forgets. Something to work on.
I did actually. You sent me over somebody who attended that meeting who wanted some more information. I did reach out to them, and they've reached back to me. So we have connected, and I am helping them.
Fabulous. Okay. Then how about Brother Griffin for PQ stake, Penasquitas?
Well, we're having a meeting with the state high council called for the emergency response group on Sunday. We're pretty excited about that. And the biggest question we're going to ask the people is this: when there's a disaster in the area, who is the bishop going to call? And they'll usually call the Elders Quorum and Relief Society. I said, that's the reason you need to get an emergency response group for the ward, because those are the people that are going to be called during an emergency to handle and find out where the ward is. We're looking forward to show them the map that Mike's doing. We're just going to show them a preliminary one, how to pull up the ward map and click on the dots, and it shows you how many people in that dot area. Enlarge the map or decrease the map, and to get your working people for your boots on the ground. With having some resistance, people wanting to going away from technology back to boots on the ground, but I want to bring up the ideas about all the disasters that have happened in the area that have taken out the communication. So that's about it. We're going to do is we're going to put people when they go around, and we're going to do boots on the ground in April. We're going to have them pass out the SD emergency app, how to each of the houses they deliver. I still think this is the most important thing that a ward emergency response group can do, is get everybody in the ward and state on the emergency app, SD emergency app, because they can contact people when things happen. The churches do the following up afterwards, but the SD emergency app is the key, I really believe, to getting people in the state, especially all the new people that move in. They have not a clue about the disasters that can happen in this county. But we're working with this, and we're sort of pushing the council, because that is the key to this whole thing.
Yeah. And I would even use the recent example that Brother Cottam gave us, is that right, for Escondido? You know, if the dam goes and everybody's out on separate islands.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you, so power and electricity could be out, but as Mickey often points out, knowing your safety hazards, because sometimes you might have to shelter in place and you aren't able to leave either. So, we're never going to be able to prepare for every emergency. But I think if we pray about it individually and with our councils, that we'll get that inspiration we need for our specific area. So great job, Brother Griffith. I appreciate it. Then how about Jason Torbenson, if you're still with us for San Diego?
Yep. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had a meeting with one of our wards. Turns out Mike was there, and Mike will be hearing this for the first time as well. But I asked Mike, because this ward is so far ahead in a number of different things, and we wanted to use them as a test case for not just our stake, but for everybody that's sitting here listening to this, on some emergency communications, on how do we get down to that level just above where we've lost communications, and we're looking for backup generators and radios bouncing off of hills and stuff. And in talking with I talked to one of the counselors in the stake presidency, and he said, you need to talk to the stake president. The church recently came through and audited every stake's account in the church and took back all their COVID money, meaning there's no more slush funds. So everybody that thought they had money to buy communications equipment or emergency preparedness money or water supplies, whatever it is, all that money's gone. They didn't spend it, so it's gone. So now it's becoming a little more critical on the specific pieces and the timing on how you buy equipment. And so for Mike, it's going to end up being, okay, if we want to build a communications backbone, what pieces of the backbone do we start with? And over a multi-year plan, how do we get from here to there? So, this is back to kind of business as normal pre-COVID. During COVID, all those stakes were kind of flush with cash. Well, all that cash is gone. All that money has been retrieved and is being reallocated. So communications equipment, is going to be specifically difficult. So you need to get in your stake presidency's ear about, hey, we need to be squirreling away some money so that we can buy whatever it is we want to buy, whether it's radios for the individual units, whether it's generators for the repeater, whatever it is. And Mike's putting together a nice plan, but what we thought we had, we no longer had. And this has happened just a couple weeks ago. So that money has gotten a little more thin. So, I'm constantly saying emergency readiness is a lot like nuclear weapons. They're very expensive to build, very expensive to maintain, and you hope you never use them.
Yeah.
But in this case, we want to build up a communication system that we can use constantly, right? I mean, that's what we were talking about last week. How do we have quarterly or semi-annual tests to flex our muscles to make sure that we're not caught unawares if we don't have the equipment and it's not up and running? So it's everybody that's listening to this needs to get with their stake presidency and just get in their ear and be like, hey, we're going to have some expenses. I know it needs to come over years, so I need you to start putting away some money for me. So whether it's one of the counselors or the stake president himself, you need to start getting in their ear about saving away some money for emergency readiness. Because, everybody's got a different thing, right? Whether you want to save water or you want to prepare for fires, but everybody needs to talk or communicate. So this is one that we've got to stream across the board. That'd be it for me.
Jason, thanks. Can I interject something here?
Please.
Terry? Yeah. Jason and I and our stake president here at San Diego Stake is just gung-ho on board. I mean, couldn't ask for more support. And I've been giving a lot of thought about radio communication, and I've been giving a lot of thought about boots on the ground and how, if we had to, how do we use boots on the ground only to get information to our stake president or even to our area, to Elder Clark? How would we do that if we had no radios? Because the reality is, even if you just do a simplex thing, it's still complicated. There's still a lot of points of failure. So I have really been thinking about that a lot. I'm looking at our map in the Claremont ward as a way to try to look at this and figure out how to do it. Like maybe we have our districts and we have district captains or block captains, however you want to set it up. So I'm looking at, is there a central location that they could walk to and give that to somebody who has a bike or something, you know, that he can actually, our stake president is up on Mount Soledad here. It's in the La Jolla area. So it's possible. It's possible to do it without any radio because, you know, there's, you know, let's not forget there's EMF. Unless you have your radio locked up in a, you know, a metal box, your radio could be worthless if there's a big pulse like that. So we're preparing for everything. And I think the communication that we've been getting from our area president has been very helpful to us on this committee as we're talking about the direction and where it leads us and the things that we should be thinking about. You know, Elder Clark said we need boots on the ground. He didn't say anything about radios. I think that he would like to see this plan be completed without any type of radio at all. So that is really the you know, the nothing works. Even the radios that we hadn't planned to use got fried, you know, by a pulse of some kind. So we're going to be looking at that real hard too. We're going to try to have radios as few as we can and try to make the system simple. And I don't know how it's all going to work out yet, but I really feel that we're on the right track and that we'll be prepared as we can be, we will be.
As a kind of caveat on that, the state president challenged us to as well. You can't say assign and you can't say call, but if you know somebody has proclivities to motorcycles, bicycles, whatever it is, you start having them acquire. Do you have an extra? Do you have parts? Do you have blah, blah, blah? How do we take somebody's hobby and or how they exercise and how do we turn that into something we can use within the emergency readiness realm into something, you know, really good? So, you know, if you've got a guy that has some motorcycles and he likes motorcycles, how much gas is in his garage? Does he have extra parts? And the real key, right, is if we're talking about an event in an area of 60,000 people, like the La Jolla Ward, so you've got 60,000 people that you've got to deal with. And let's say it's an earthquake and now roads are unusable and you're using a motorcycle. It's great to say, well, we're going to have Billy Bob go over on his motorcycle and pick up the 80-year-old grandma that's stuck in the nursing home and we want to bring her over and take care of her ourselves. She can't ride on the back of that bike. So how are we going to move her? Well, it so happens they make these trailer bobs that you can put on the back of a motorcycle. They're one wheel and you can kind of drag it along. So, but if you don't have one of those, it's too late to buy one in the emergency. So if the guy's already got a proclivity to motorcycles, can we get him a bob or can he buy his own bob so that he's got that so that when the time comes, he's got the right equipment? That's enough for snowboxing.
But you know, in an emergency like that, they might be safer in the nursing home than they would be.
I'm not going to argue that, but you know, medicines, electricity, all those
Right.
things start to play in. And we've got 2 members of our wards that work in nursing homes, and they're like, I'm guessing some of these people would be better out than in. But you're right, and that's going to be up to the local leaders to know who's in the nursing home and what their medical status is and their medicines and all that kind of stuff. You're right.
That being said, Jason, this is another thing that that's really been wrestling with in my mind. If we contact people for a boots on the ground visit, what are we going to tell them we're going to do when we get there? Are we going to be?
You mean the question is what do we want to do with you, or what do we expect from you?
The first phase of this operation is to gather numbers. That's it. We are not 911. We're, you know, so if you get to your very first house and you find somebody buried under rubble, you're going to be there a while. You're not going to be able even to go on to the second house. And how much, you know, this is really what I'm wrestling with. And when we try to get them enrolled, and we're not going to answer that tonight, but I'd like everybody to kind of think about this, because we're going to be contacting these people and say, we're going to come help you in an emergency. And they might imagine all kinds of things that you're going to be able to do for them. Mainly, all we want to know is who's injured, who's alive, who's missing, do you have safe shelter, you know, and then we need to gather that information and get it to Salt Lake. That's our first step. in the communication side of things for sure. So I'd like you to think about, actually, because we're going to do drills, but we're not going to find people who need medical help and things.
Well,
like that.
here's the biggest problem with that question, Mike, is
Mhm.
when you arrive at their house and it's a Tuesday afternoon and their husband works in LA and their kids are at school, at a private school, and on a field trip downtown at the museum.
Right.
And they're like, well, can you help me find my kids and my husband?
Exactly.
How's
Exactly.
that
So
question
we don't
work?
want them to do, we don't want to make promises we can't keep. And so I think that's something we need to think about as we move forward with this and explaining to people what they can expect when we arrive to their house, boots on the ground.
See, that's another reason that people in, well, that's another reason why I'm in CERT, because CERT teaches you how to size up a building. So after something like an earthquake, you don't go cruising into that building when the building is potentially very dangerous. And if you are able to go in and you find someone that's injured, it teaches you basic first aid, CPR, using AEDs if you have those things. That's why, I don't know, from my perspective, I could help some of my neighbors with the information that I have.
Mhm.
It's really good information to learn, just for your family, for your neighbors, and for your community. But,
You're
I'm
right.
just saying, CERT's
No,
good
that's a
to
very
learn.
good point. There is training we could all use. But
Uh-huh.
this boots on the ground is different than texting. It's a totally different animal
Mhm.
because you're going to be face to face with them in their space. And so it presents problems we won't have when we have at least enough communication to text and get information that we need to go back. So I think this is an element of boots on the ground that I hadn't thought about that I think we kind of need to get a handle on what our best practice is going to be. And
Something else I was going to say is, when if we're using walkie-talkies like I use to
Mhm.
communicate, I can get my information via ham radio to someone that might be, closer to our bishop. But the other possibility is if you're trying to get information passed on, if you identify ahead of time who the next closest person that you can reach that's on the edge of your group and can talk to them via walkie-talkie, they can relay that message via walkie-talkie to the next person to get it to either the bishopric, or the elders quorum, someone that can get it on to somebody that can pass it up the chain.
with the stakes that we have in our mission, San Diego County, Imperial County, if we really get enough people to think about this, we get enough people, using these tools that we have and pondering and praying about these questions. And we need to remember that praying about how we solve the problems, like the brother Jared, Lord, what do you want? How do you want me to put some light in that boat for you?
But you have to practice it ahead of time. You have to know how to use it, who to contact, what to do. If you don't practice it, then it's not going to be of any help to you.
And
All
same.
right, I'm calling time.
Okay, Jerry.
Sorry,
Um,
Terry,
back
next
into
time I'll just
class.
say no comment.
No, we want to hear, people have these same questions, so I'm glad we're addressing them. But I still want to hear from a few of the stakes that haven't reported in, and anyone that wants to stick around. Brother Kennedy, are you still on with us? Because you're not on my screen right now.
I don't see him.
Okay, he might have left. I had a question for him, but all right. Jerry Hansen, I skipped you for El Cajon, but you had kind of given us an overview. Was there anything you had to add?
Not a whole lot. Yesterday, I watched a very informative webinar from the Earthquake Country Help ECA Earthquake Country Alliance on tsunami. And it was very informative, very nice. If I have the opportunity, they're supposed to send me out the recording. If I can transmit it up to you, I will, and you can do it what you like.
Perfect.
Those that may be new, those that would like to get onto that website, just look up Earthquake Country Alliance and it'll take you to all the information you need. Other than that, I really don't have a lot to report. Here we go again. Guess is the best way I could put it. So that's about it. Thank
Here we
you.
go, yeah. And I apologize for, last time we met, I guess VOAD hadn't met yet, and so I didn't have a date. I didn't send you any information because I never got a notification that they were having their meetings, so I apologize for that.
I didn't get one either. I was ready to
Nobody
get on
did.
board. Yeah, so did
It
they
was
have it,
weird.
you know?
They had it, they actually had it, but yeah, anyways, if they send me out a notification, I will always forward it on to you guys so that you can try and attend, because that's another place that you're going to find great information. Again, VOAD standing for Volunteer Organizations Active in a Disaster. So, and all the players from the county, all the resources are usually there. So it's a great place to make contacts. San Diego East, Brother Bostic, did you have anything else to add? I know you've
I had
given
a couple of things to add. Yeah, thank you. We still have some of our callings vacant and so on. I'm so happy that, excuse me, Brother Carlson was added to the Grossman Ward. He's been a leader in our bishopric previously, and he is a no nonsense, action oriented guy. So we'll get that his word in super safe real quick. So very happy and pleased that his bishop made my day when he signed him. So he's very good. Now I want to update you something, Terry. March 4th, I mentioned this previously. Our stake hosted a ham operator training session.
Yes, how'd it go?
It went wonderful. We had 27 people attend. I attended it, and I even passed the class, the exam. I only missed 2, but we had, what was good, we had almost 10 members of our church also attended. So it was very, very successful, and we were very, very pleased at that. So that worked extremely well, made our day. So, so adding the operators. Now, I do have a question. In our emergency response plan for the stake, we use ham radios as our method of status communication of the ward status to the stake center. You know, and I presume that's still a good plan, but I'm getting mixed emotions as to what's the media. Now we have our radio operators, we have maybe about 30 or 40 within the stake, and each Sunday night we have a radio check. So we're continuing to do that and so on, but we're planning to have, our plan is to have the ham radio operators be our media to report status of our wards in event of emergency. Now, is that still viable, or should we look at something else? What?
For the Guyman? It's a question he's had too.
Yeah. I've been struggling with this for 3 years because used to be ham radio drove all of this. And then about 3 years ago, they said, we don't want you to participate. So
who's they? Who's they?
Who's
the they?
When Elder Miskin left and the new people came in, and here's what I think, brothers. Here's what I think. When ham radio was driving this thing, we were telling stake presidents and bishops and whatnot that they need to get their ham radio license. And that some people did. Some leaders did. Elder Clark has his license. David Kennedy has his license. They even have radios. But I don't think they've ever used them. And they're not using them with the frequency where they become proficient radio operators. So I think what is happening is, first of all, as we move forward in doing this training, we're going to talk, when we talk about radios, we're not going to mention amateur radio really right off the bat. Because we're looking for a special breed of people. We're looking for people who like to operate, radios. Not everybody does. So we don't want to be spending our efforts trying to get those people. We'll work this out. We'll figure out how to do it. But we'll get radio operators and we'll help them to train them to use whatever modes are available. Brother DeGraw has GMRS. By the way, I read the rules. In an emergency, you can let anybody use your radio to report an emergency. So there is some There is some wiggle room. There is some wiggle room in the emergency operation.
That's correct.
Yeah. So, so the answer is that if you have, I think if you have a radio operators in your ward enough to cover, you know, a boots on the ground reporting system, because that's actually the question I have right now. How do we get, I mean, I think we could probably get it to the stake president, but then how do we get it to the area president? Well, he's not that far away in our case where we live. You know, we could probably ride a bike up to his place and give him the information, but I'm not sure how he's going to get it to Salt Lake, and I don't know how we're going to get it to Sister Jimenez. One of the things that I'm working on right now is that you don't need to have a license to listen. So I propose that we set up times when we will be, amateur radio operators will have the information, they will be transmitting it to other amateur radio operators, and the leadership can listen and hear that information. They don't need to be able to operate a radio. They just need to be able to turn it on and listen to it and get that information. I'm working on getting Sister Jimenez, an amateur radio operator up there who will get her ready. This is one of the plans, and I'll stop there.
Yeah.
So if you have enough people in your ward to do it, use them and it'll work, then go ahead. If you don't, then you have to do something else.
When you're working within the boundaries of the local ward and maybe even the stake, depending how large your stake is, I know backcountry stakes might not have that same ability, but you know, if you had other means of transportation that you could still do an eyeball to eyeball contact, then, you know, we encourage you to use that. But outside that, like Brother Guyman is saying, how do we get it up to Sister Jimenez and how does she get it to Salt Lake? So
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yes.
So, you know, just I don't know if I ever mentioned it to, well, anyway, there's two things you can do to get kind of a feel for what it would be like in a real disaster if you've never lived through one. You can you either read the book 1 Second After by William Forstchen. He did that. He wrote the book and gave it to Newt Gingrich to give to Congress because they hadn't hardened our grid, and they still haven't. Really scary book. The second thing is on YouTube, there's a movie that was done on 2-hour movie on ABC in 1983 that was called The Next Day. Freaking scary as well. That'll kind of give you an idea of what could happen in a real bad disaster. Just to kind of, you know, prep yourself a little bit. And anyway, that's my comment.
So again, I would fall back on Brother Bostic, working with your council and praying for inspiration on what's going to work best for you guys and going from there. And we'll try and, you know, work on hardening a good system in play that, or at least options for taking it further than our local area. So San Diego South, we don't seem to have a representative from San Diego South. Does anyone know any status about them? Any leadership or people we can contact? No, no, and no. Okay. And San Marcos, I know the High Councilman, I sent an invite to him, but he's not here.
Terry, my wife just walked in and whispered in my ear that there's a change in that calling that's occurring with him, by the way. So that's unofficial, but stay tuned for more. I know.
Okay.
Every 2 hours, things change. Hey, the good news is
yes.
San Marcos had its first stake conference last Sunday, and about 800 people showed up. So we're really a stake. You know, people were there. So
that's great. That's great.
That's good. And what's the other news? Other than that, I don't have any emergency news, but we do. For those who probably saw on the news, you know, we had so much rain up here in North County that the 78 freeway got that big sinkhole. So the west side is closed until Saturday. They're working over, you know, night and day to try to get rid of the sinkhole and drain it better. And that freeway has never been closed that long. So there was a rude awakening for people yesterday who didn't know, and it was an hour, you know, of diversion to go like 5 miles. So, and that's just for that. You know, imagine if there's a big earthquake, right? You know, you got a shelter in place. There's nobody getting out of town.
Right. And that's up by the College Ave area, is that right?
Yep. Yeah, I drove by the eastbound's open, so I came home today, and I'd never see. It's wild. You look down this freeway, and half of it's mounds of dirt and big caterpillars and all. You know, you're just like, wow. You just never see freeways in that condition. It was pretty, yeah, kind of a surreal.
Okay, thank you for that update. How about Vista? That's another one that we haven't seen really any participation from.
What's that, the
Anybody
Vista
know-
stake?
Yeah,
Yeah, my old stake. Yeah, all quiet. I think they're still around.
I don't have any leadership
Yeah,
information.
I'm going to a wedding reception Saturday. I'll probably bump into some. I'll check on them for you.
Someone to contact to find out more information would be great. So.
All right, I'll see what I can dig up for you.
Yeah, there's a big hole in that.
Did I
stake.
Did I miss anyone? Is there any more information that we need to discuss? All right. If I did miss you and you're holding silent, I apologize. But this has been really informative for me. I hope you got as much out of it as I did. Thank you for your participation. And actually, if I could ask Brother Egbert, do you have any last words? I haven't really given you a chance to say anything.
I was just going to repeat what Jerry Hansen said. I listened to the tsunami thing. The Earthquake County Alliance has a monthly meeting, but it always moves around. They have such good experts on earthquake and they update a lot of earthquake stuff, but it's not on the same time every month. So you need to get an email on that. But it was an excellent talk on tsunamis, which we don't usually think about. And otherwise, the VOAD and fire safe councils are meetings that I try to go to each month to kind of stay familiar with what are the priorities of emergency preparedness that the county and the state have right now.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. And so why don't we go ahead and adjourn, and the next meeting will be Thursday, April 20th. And we'll send out the minutes and this recording to you and any of the garnered information from tonight, especially where it comes to links and resources that you can contact. And so with that being said, Wayne Bostic, would you mind giving our closing prayer tonight?
Absolutely. I'd be blessed to. Thank you so much. Dear Heavenly Father, for our membership in our true church. We're so thankful for our membership in the Emergency Response Council and Commission and this team. Our meetings, we're able to get a lot of dialogue and great ideas out and discuss them and improve our approaches so that we be able to fully respond in a real emergency and ensure the safety of all our members. We thank thee, Heavenly Father. We say, love you, say your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.